Hey there, it's Silver. This is Chaos on Wheels. Specifically, this is mostly going to be covering the most fleshed out game mode that the game has right now, which is its Chaos Career, which is a sort of sandboxy career mode sort of idea. And this is a third-person car combat game, so this is something that I never really mentioned much on this channel because I've never really had the opportunity to do so, honestly, is that I love car combat games. I grew up playing tons and tons of Vigilante 8 and Twisted Metal, and of course stuff like Interstate 76 as well. And there are plenty of others that I enjoyed, but the point is, this is a genre that I have sort of dear to my heart, but unfortunately it's also a genre that has kind of fallen by the wayside for a long time now. It's been a while since we've really had any sort of car combat revival. I mean, Twisted Metal got a PS3 game, but it wasn't really like mega popular, and it didn't cause a big revival. It didn't cause a whole bunch of other people to make their own or anything like that. It was just sort of an outlier. So obviously I'm going to take the time to look at any game that is sort of in that genre or adjacent to it because of how much I used to enjoy it and how much I have a lot of nostalgia. I'll admit that it's mostly nostalgia for the genre, but it's nostalgia that I've revisited multiple times in the past through emulation and stuff, and it still tends to hold up. So the way that Chaos Career works is you will be given a basic car with some basic stuff attached to it, and you'll go into these deathmatch arenas with a bunch of other cars, and you will blow each other up repeatedly until the time runs out, and whoever has the most kills and assists wins, and you will get some experience as well as some money from doing this, and the experience will level you up, which will allow you to upgrade your stuff to a higher level. So basically your level is just the ceiling to which you can upgrade all of your individual parts and things. And then the money, of course, is used to buy new cars, buy new parts, and upgrade all the parts that you have. And you can go back to your garage and mess with a fleet of 5 different vehicles. You can hold, there are more than 5 in the game, but you can hold 5 at once that you have fully kitted out and customized. You have a fair bit of visual customization from, of course, coloring to decals to changing light colors and changing wheel colors and pretty much all the stuff that you would expect in general from something like this. And then you have all of the functional customization of things like adding armor to the vehicle, customizing your weapon loadout and stuff like that. Your weapons currently consist of one turret. This turret has a primary fire, which is like a sort of machine gun, and then a secondary fire, which is a rocket launcher. So these are rockets, not missiles. They're not guided, but they are very powerful, and different turrets can have different fire rates and different amounts of firepower, as well as a different number of rockets that can be loaded at once before they have to reload. They also have infinite ammo and of a normal type, but they do overheat, and different turrets have a different speed at which they'll overheat and a different speed at which they'll cool down. You've also got some fixed guns on a different button that they just fire straight forward, so you have to aim these by physically steering your car to make sure that it's facing whatever you want to hit, and you also have to be on the same rough level as what you want to hit because they don't really point up or down, so these are harder to use, but they do add some supplementary firepower to your car. And then you've also got some homing missiles, and these can be tracked to either target other cars or turrets, which I'll explain in a minute. And you have a very limited number of these that you'll start the match with, but they are quite powerful. They fire straight up in the air and then come down on the head of whatever you're targeting. Your driver also has a special ability, which I didn't expect. There are different special abilities that you can choose from. You'll have a couple unlocked at first, and you can unlock the rest by doing various challenges, like placing a certain place in a deathmatch, or getting a certain number of kills, and things like that. And these range from stuff like a nitro boost, to a self-heal, to a shield, and some other things like that. So these are like supplementary powers that you can use that are on a pretty long cooldown. If you want, you can also choose to spend the money on a different ammo type for any of your weapons that allows you to sort of spend one use of that ammo type to improve its firepower in some way for the next match. And you can just, keep yourself stocked up with extra ammo types to go into matches more powerful, or just use the normal default ammo type, which is infinite, but less powerful. And the vehicle itself will determine things like acceleration, top speed, braking power, your ability to drift around, and of course the overall weight of the vehicle and how it feels to sling it around the arenas. Once you're in battle, you'll have 2 different health gauges at the bottom right. You've got a white one, which is your armor. This just represents your actual physical armor pieces, and as it depletes, the armor will fall off the sides and the front and rear of your vehicle, which is a nice touch. And then once that's depleted, your red health gauge is what will actually take damage, and of course if that depletes, then you explode. But I've noticed your red health gauge actually seems to regenerate a little bit over time if you manage to avoid taking damage for a while, whereas your armor does not. You have to find pickups around the place to actually refill your armor gauge. And this is one element of classic car combat games that I'm very glad they went heavy on, is the pickups. You find lots of floating power-ups around the place to run into and collect. So you can have repairs of various kinds to get yourself back in the fight. You can also have things that will refresh your personal power cooldown so you can use it faster. Things that will refresh your weapon cooldowns so that they can actually fire more. And even ones that will make them build up less, or in fact I think not build up at all, so you can basically fire them infinitely for a short time. A sort of cooling system. And you'll also find a lot of different rocket types, which I really like. There are a ton of different rockets that you'll find just sort of laying around the place that you can run into to collect, and you can press F to cycle between the various rocket types you've collected so far and just fire them out through your normal right click on your turret. And there are things like shock rockets and flaming ones. There are like toxic rockets. There are mini nukes. There are these ones that are my favorite that they do a lot of damage and they fire like straight forward at a really, really fast rate. So like they hit almost instantly, whereas the rest of the rockets you have to lead your target with. These are like an almost instant hit rocket. They're really fun to use. So I think the rocket weapons in general are actually my favorite part of the game. They're satisfying to lead the targets with. They feel like they do a good amount of damage because you can see them explode, and they are nicely varied. So when it comes to the sort of rocket weapons, I think those are definitely the best. And the main gameplay loop is going to consist of you rocketing around the place in your vehicle and just trying to find enemy cars and blow them up as best as you can and avoid getting blown up yourself. Now, one thing you'll notice that I mentioned earlier is that there are a lot of turrets placed around the battlefield. This is another feature that I really like. It adds a little bit of extra personality and hazard to the stages, and there are several different kinds of turrets that you'll find, and you can actually destroy these, and they do give score, sort of like kills for normal cars, but they are of course quite dangerous. They do a lot of damage, and they have a lot of different weapons they can employ against you depending on the type of turret. Some of them can even fire like missile salvos at you and stuff like that, and those are really dangerous. So you're going to be exploring around these stages, trying to find different pickups to get an advantage, as well as avoid the various turrets around the place so that they don't blow you up, and find enemies to blow them up. And the turrets do a good job, I will admit, of affecting the enemies as well. So it's not just, they don't just go for you and ignore enemy AI or anything. They are like a free-for-all kind of rule set where they'll go for whatever is close to them, whether it's an enemy AI or you. So that is nice. And the different currently available maps do have a different set of turrets with different characteristics available to them, so that gives each one a bit of a unique feel, so because they all have their own unique hazards that you've got to deal with. And blowing up turrets is also a really good idea, not just because it gives you some score towards the end of the match, but also because it drops a bunch of pickups around them, like new rockets and gun refreshing power-ups and things like that. So they're like a source of power-ups as well. So that's really the main loop. You just go around these maps and blow each other up until time runs out and see what you get. See if you can go back to your garage and improve yourself a little bit, maybe even buy a new vehicle or a new weapon or something, and fit yourself up for a more difficult match and continue on from there. There are going to be other modes available, but they're not currently in yet. There's going to be a team deathmatch, for instance. That'll be fun. There's also going to be another one, and there's this chaos mode that is also in the game, but it's a sort of one life mode, and it wasn't really as exciting to show off because just sitting there watching, like spectating for a while is not the most fun thing to show in a YouTube video. So far I think it's a really solid start for an interesting car combat game, and it does bring me back to being a lot younger, playing stuff like Twisted Metal and Vigilante 8, and I have a feeling that's kind of part of the point of it, right, is to feel a bit like those games, and that's kind of what I'm looking for, to be honest. If I'm playing something like this, I want to be brought back to those times. And so far what's available in the early access version is a promising car combat game, but I do have a fair number of criticisms to level at it as well. So here we go. For one, I think the current weapon system is a little bit too prohibitive. The cooldowns for your guns are way too long. There will be long stretches of the game where you'll simply be doing nothing because you have nothing to fire. Your rockets take a long time to reload, your guns take a very long time to cool down, and they don't take very long to heat up, so you have just a sort of short burst of fire, and then they are unavailable for a long time after that. And it feels like a lot of the combat is sort of like jousting, where you sort of go in for a quick assault and then you have to run away for a while because you can't do anything. This lessens a little bit once you get higher level, better weapons, but it's still kind of a problem. It feels like your weapons all just heat up so fast and take so long to cool down and reload that there are long stretches of the game where you just sort of can't do anything. I'll also say that I think the normal mode for the game is balanced very strangely. Like, a lot of the times in normal mode, all that's really going to happen is you're going to sort of drive around aimlessly, get blown up by stuff you didn't see coming, and then barely manage to scratch most enemies. It feels like your weapons barely do anything to them, and you'll be constantly getting assists because you will have sort of scratched them at some point, and then they all got blown up conveniently off screen. It's a very strange experience. I find that easy mode feels a lot better because it actually feels like you're doing some damage. In fact, I would say that the weapon feedback in general is something that needs tweaked. The rocket and missile weapons feel great. They have a really nice impact to them, but your turret just sort of feels like it's spraying wildly, and it's hard to control, and it doesn't really have that much impact to it. And also, your fixed forward guns feel almost entirely useless. I have never actually gotten a kill with these things. They feel like they almost don't do any damage at all, which is the opposite of how you would think they should feel, because they are harder to use, that you have to, steer and aim them manually, so you would expect them to like shred through things and do a lot of damage as a result of how difficult they are to properly use. But no, they feel like they basically just tickle the enemy. So I think the game definitely needs some better combat feedback. I think it would help a lot. I think it would also help if the weapons had more variance between them. So like each individual turret you could buy, they all look quite different. They all have some cool models, which I appreciate, but they all kind of sound and feel the same. And it would be nice if they had more of a marked difference in terms of firing sound, fire rate, impact. They just had a different feel to them that made them all feel unique, rather than just kind of basically the same thing but slightly higher numbers. But even more so than the combat feedback, there is one thing that I feel absolutely needs to be said because of how important it was to the old school car combat games, and that's map design. The map design in this game is on the right track, but it's not quite there yet. A lot of it is just sort of flat open fields, which was more often than not how those old school games actually worked. They usually had a couple of big open areas, but they were interspersed between other different types of designed areas that had more specific kinds of combat, like interior areas that were more claustrophobic, or areas with more verticality and things like that. But the thing about those old school car combat games was that they had very dynamic levels, where they all had some secrets to find and interactable elements to mess with and stuff like that. You could find a big building with a huge donut on top of it and probably blow that building up and cause the donut to roll around and crush someone. You could loose a Ferris wheel on the arena. You could cause lightning to shoot out from giant outlets. You could go and jump around these various places that had like platforming challenges almost, and ended up getting you to secret locations that you couldn't otherwise reach in the level for better pickups that had, you could only find that weapon in that one spot or something like that. You could blow up parts of the level and expand the arena to include new stuff. I think this game would benefit a lot from something like Twisted Metal Black's level design. If we go back to something like Twisted Metal Black, we'll see that the very first level, the sort of big junkyard area, had some large open fields to fight in, as well as a fair amount of vertical hills and some other more industrial stuff to fight around, and you could even do some secret stuff, like bring down an entire plane on one part of the battlefield that then caused a tunnel to appear and opened up a completely new underground area that wasn't accessible before, and expanding the level that way. And pretty much all of the levels had things like this. They had secrets you could find, they had sequences of things you could do to unlock something or find new areas, and it made exploring those maps a lot of fun because they had all of this unique sort of topography to them. It made the levels have a ton of replayability because it felt like there was always something you didn't notice before, something new you could find, a pickup you didn't know was there, a little background detail you never noticed before, something that was destructible and opened up a new part of the level that you never tried, stuff like that. And I think this game would really heavily benefit from diving headlong into that side of the old school car combat genre. So, my current view on Chaos on Wheels is that it's a good start, and it's something that I'm definitely going to be keeping an eye on because I'm excited about where it could go from here, and I hope to see a lot of polish, content addition, and some new maps and stuff added that will really help to round it out. So, I'll put the link below in the description as usual so that you can go and check it out yourselves. Thank you guys very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.